The menace. Well, drug and substance abuse were seen to be one of the factors that could be driving students into indiscipline. As a result, mandatory drug tests were proposed ahead of the reopening of schools. Well, schools are now open, but parents and other interested parties are questioning just how this will work, whether it's even illegal, and most importantly, will it be the silver bullet to rid schools of delinquent behavior? NACADA is the latest body to add its voice to the growing concerns. And joining me now virtually is Dr. YVONNE Orlando, Director of Public Education, Advocacy, Rehabilitation, and Regional Coordination at the authority. Dr. Orlando, thank you so much for your time. Now, the statement that was released today by NACADA said, we're not involved in any drug testing whatsoever. Is this an indication that NACADA is against the drug test? Because there's also a concern raised in the statement that there's no legal requirement for mandatory drug tests in schools.
Thank you for having me, Victoria. Now, the authority is clear that drug testing should be part of a comprehensive intervention. So drug testing denotes that somebody has already been found to be using the substance or actually dependent on the substance. But in schools, the focus should be more on prevention. So from the NACADA perspective, we want to focus more on early intervention and the prevention aspect. Testing can only come in once somebody has actually been seen to be behaving in a manner to denote they're using a substance or they need for clarity. So it is part of an intervention.
So when you talk about early intervention, what does that look like essentially?
With early intervention, we are looking at creating awareness in schools. So you'll find the schools which have maybe SCAD, for example, the student campaigns, schools that have guidance and counseling programs. It means there's always awareness creation that is going on. This is early intervention. Also, if somebody is suspected to be using a substance, they're able to be offered counseling within the school premises, or their parents are told to talk to them. This is early intervention before an issue gets to the point whereby everybody is aware, or the students' grades are being affected, or now the school actually feels like this is a huge problem for all of us.
There was a suggestion by NACADA for schools to implement what they called national guidelines on drug abuse, substance abuse. What do these guidelines actually say?
Okay. Now, the national guidelines for the alcohol and substance abuse interventions within basic institutions was developed by NACADA, TSC, and Ministry of Education. Now, these guidelines are actually talking about how to manage substance abuse incidences within schools. So we have early intervention. What do you need to do? We have the aspect of prevention. What do you need to do within the school setup? We have counseling and referral. In case somebody has actually been found in possession, or somebody has been found to be high, or be found to be using the substance, how do you manage that? We also have incident management. In cases where maybe a group of students are using a drug, what does the school need to do? This is all addressed within the guidelines. The guidelines are also highlighting who should be going to those schools to talk to the students. They have to be competent people. So all these have been clearly highlighted within the guidelines. In other words, you're saying that the teachers need more training, students need regular sensitizations, parents need to come into the picture. It's a holistic approach that can easily be given within the school setup.
All right, let's hear from a education stakeholder, INDIMULI KAHI, who gave a reaction to this. He is from the Kenya Secondary School Association. Let's listen into what he had to say.
I know there are those schools that have asked for drug tests, and there have been issues, but I want to say let us not look at the negative side of the school ordering students to be tested. If as a school we notice that our students are behaving in a manner that is not in conformity with the school rules, or it is not in a manner in which they have been behaving before, then we need to start questioning what could be influencing. And when parents are involved and told, do a drug test, look at it from the positive side. One, it is positive when a parent learns that the child is actually free of drugs. That settles the child, the parent, and even the school. Two, if the parent learns that his child or her child is involved in drugs, then it gives an opportunity for this parent to look for ways and means on helping the child get out of the drug challenge. It also helps the school to now find out what mitigation measures can they put in place to help their students who are involved in drug abuse to get out of it.
Dr. YVONNE, you just heard from Indimuli in terms of accepting this from a positive perspective and not looking at the negative aspect. But I can only think about a student who is innocent in all of this, who is now subjected to a drug test. It can insinuate that they are guilty before they even go through the process. What are the psychological implications? And I'm speaking to you now. You are a clinical psychologist as well. Is there any psychological impact on students with a process like this?
Yes, thank you. Now, on the aspect of the psychological impact, there could be, but it could be minimal. For the students who've never thought about substance use at all, then the psychological aspect would be high because you're actually giving some of them ideas. For the ones who have been using the substance, first of all, when you're talking about positive or negative tests, that does not denote that somebody is actually using the substance. For some of the schools that requested that the students go with a certificate showing that they're not using the substance, you realize that some of these substances, the duration of time they spend in the body is very limited. So if I was to go to school next week, I do my test this week, it might turn out negative. But then after the test, I could use the substance. So students will find ways of beating the system if they feel like we are playing some games. And I won't be surprised if that is what has happened. We also have the ones who have tested negative, but they know they're using the substance. We have the ones who have tested positive intentionally because they did not maybe want to go back to a particular school. So we are saying that, yes, testing can be done, but at what stage? Testing is part of treatment. Just like when you go to hospital for tests, it's usually because you've presented with a disease. There are some symptoms. So the symptoms help the doctor to identify what type of test you need to go through. And that's why you're saying, even for the drug testing, it can be done, but as part of comprehensive intervention. In that, as Indimuli said, what next?
So certainly a lot more. Yeah. No, certainly a lot more needs to be done in terms of conversations, sensitizing parents as well, because, like you said, it's not a foolproof approach. But that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Dr. YVONNE Orlando, for your time. And of course, we will be having this conversation much later as parents continue to raise concerns. Let's take a short break here on Tonight. Much more ahead, including. Kenya gears up to double its oil handling capacity.